You don't see a 20% drop in a stock every day, but that's what we're seeing from Lordstown today, down about 20% after the CEO and CFO resigned.
Hey, I'm Stephen and this is Solving the Money Problem. If you're new, welcome. If you're not, welcome back. In today's episode of The Bell Curve is Real, we're continuing to look at the company known as Fraudstown Motors, the Titanic, which is currently halfway towards the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. Few people with functioning grey matter will be surprised to learn that the CEO and CFO have recently resigned from the company, aka got fired. So in this video, we're going to look at some of the breaking media coverage around this slow motion train wreck and look at some of the signs that we're going to see playing out over and over and over again in other EV SPacs in the coming months and years. This is a great opportunity to learn some of the warning signs to look for and how to avoid losing enormous amounts of money making absolutely idiotic investment decisions. So let's get into the video. And by the way, since I know there's a lot of crypto lovers watching and people who like free stuff, it's your lucky day. For a limited time, you can get up to $250 in free crypto bonuses when funding a new account on BlockFi, where you can use cryptocurrency to earn interest, borrow cash, and buy or sell crypto. If you want your free crypto, use the link in the description. It also helps out the channel. And if you'd like up to 2 free stocks, check out the link in the description to WeBull. If you open a new account, you'll get 1 free stock valued up to $250 just for opening an account. And if you fund your account with $100, you'll get a second free stock valued up to $1,600. Unless you don't like free stocks, that is. And if you're in Australia, the UK, or New Zealand, you can get a free stock with stake, also using the link in the description. Let's get back to it.
Welcome back to Squawk Box. I'm LeBeau with breaking news regarding Lordstown Motors. Take a look at Lordstown. Shares down almost 10% after the company announced that CEO Steve Burns has resigned from the company and has resigned from the company's board of directors. CFO Julio Rodriguez has also resigned. This as the company announces a transition in leadership as it concludes an investigation into claims that were made by the short-selling firm Hindenburg Research. The conclusion by independent investigation is that most of the claims, according to Lordstown, that were made by Hindenburg Research were false and misleading.
Now, I don't want to be too hard on LeBeau here. Don't shoot the messenger, as they say, but this is absolute horse shit. It looks like the person that's spoon-feeding Phil his lines here has just taken Fraudstown Motors at their word without actually reading the results of the investigation. So how about we actually read the results of the investigation? So here we are on the Fraudstown Motors website on the investor section. Lordstown Motors reports results of special committee investigation of Hindenburg Research report. Now here's the key line. The special committee's investigation concluded that the Hindenburg report is, in significant respects, false and misleading. In particular, it challenges to the viability, by the way, I'm just reading verbatim there. In particular, it challenges to the viability of Lordstown Motors' technology and timeline to start production are not accurate. Now, I just want to jump in here. These dickheads are claiming that production is on schedule to begin in September. It's not. You can mark my fucking words. Come back in September. They will not have started volume production on this vehicle. Second of all, these hub motors that they're trying out, there was a vehicle fire. You read into the report the results of this, and it turns out that the fucking thing caught on fire. There was a huge train wreck. They haven't proven that this thing can work at scale. To refresh your memory, and keep in mind, everything I'm talking about in this video is just allegations, do your own research, blah fucking blah blah blah. Hindenburg Research, in their report, talking about this vehicle, claimed that they'd spoken to employees within Fraudstown who said that Lordstown had not done the necessary durability testing on these hub motors. Lordstown didn't even respond to this in their response to this investigation. They didn't say, yeah, you know what, we've actually done 1,000,000 miles of testing on these motors, so everything's fine. They just completely swept this part under the rug. This is truly alarming. This is much like when Trevor Meltdown Milton from Nikola said that he was going to refute one by one every single point made by Hindenburg Research, and then failed to refute any of them. And then later, the company admitted that there was many false and misleading statements. This is a really bad sign. There is no way these idiots are going to start production on their vehicle in September this year. I guarantee you. And second of all, I have huge doubts about the viability of this hub motor technology. So basically, in my opinion, of course, you can draw your own conclusions, but in my opinion, everything Hindenburg said was accurate, not false, not misleading. However, even Fraudstown themselves directly admit to some of the allegations made by Hindenburg Research. The most significant thing, the false and misleading numbers around pre-orders and reservations. So, let me quote. The investigation did, however, identify issues regarding the accuracy of certain statements regarding the company's pre-orders. I'm not going to read over all of this, you guys will fall asleep, but the point is here, as we know, as I've covered in previous videos about fake orders, Fraudstown were out there touting a huge number of pre-orders when in fact they were anything but. There was incentives, people were actually being paid to make these things as well. I'm not going to go into the details here. In my opinion, everything Hindenburg said about Fraudstown Motors was on the money. Fraudstown have realised that they made some extremely bad decisions. CEO was out there claiming to have an enormous number of pre-orders which were not actually pre-orders and misled the public and therefore investors in the company. This is a really bad sign. Hence, CEO's out of there, so is the CFO.
However, they did identify some issues when it came to identifying future orders of the first vehicle that Lordstown Motors will be producing. Again, shares of Lordstown down basically 10% after announcing CEO Steve Burns is out. Angela Strand, who is an independent director, has now been put in charge as acting executive chairwoman of the company, and they're going to conduct a search for a CEO. Okay. Look, they don't have a whole lot of cash, Andrew. They're going to have to do something relatively quickly here. Half the C-suite is no longer at Lordstown Motors. As you take a look at shares again, and we're showing you this because you don't see a 20% drop in a stock every day, but that's what we're seeing from Lordstown today, down about 20% after the CEO and CFO resigned. The CEO, he was also the visionary who put this together. Steve Burns, we talked with him a number of times, including in March when the controversy came up with the short seller Hindenburg research. A lot of what was released today was not just their resignation, but also the results of an independent investigation from Lordstown Motors looking into the claims from the short seller Hindenburg research. They basically said, look, the plans for that truck right there, the endurance pickup truck, they're not legitimate. That's what they basically said. And according to this independent probe, they found that most of the claims from Hindenburg were false and misleading. However, they did admit that there were some statements relating to pre-orders that were inaccurate. So again, as you take a look at shares of Lordstown Motors, and we're going to go back and take a look at where the stock was back when it was an IPO in October. Here's where it is today. So this is a company that is now looking for a CEO. The executive chairwoman now is a independent board member, Angela Strand. She is in charge. They're looking for a CEO. And I guess the big question for people becomes, what happens next for this stock if you're an investor? One investor who is not selling at this point, General Motors. It owns 5% of the shares of Lordstown Motors. The company said this morning that for now it remains, holding those stocks, and that's all that they're saying at this point. Guys, back to you.
Now, I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. General Motors are fucked. The fact that the moron steering the ship there thought it was a wise idea to take equity in Nikola Motor Corporation months after it became bleedingly obvious that the company had nothing but vaporware, were making false and misleading claims about their technology, had a charlatan for a CEO. Shout out to Trevor Meltdown Milton. Hope you're enjoying your freedom while it lasts, my friend. The fact that they partnered with this company idiotically when it was so obviously not a legitimate company, in my opinion, and then stuck with them through the investigations from the Department of Justice and the SEC, and the fact that they've done it again with Fraudstown Motors. I mean, honestly, if this isn't the biggest red flag ever for people that own GM stock, I don't know what is. So I think this would be an appropriate time for a gentle slow clap for General Motors and their brilliant, incredible, extremely smart and competent due diligence team. You idiots.
Phil, first Nikola, now Lordstown. How shaky are some of the newer companies in this space, and do you think that Detroit is going to continue to invest in them?
I think Detroit will have an interest in some of these companies, maybe not all of these companies. But, John, look at the controversies surrounding both of these companies. What did they have in common? CEOs who were way too aggressive in terms of their declarations of future product and how quickly those products were either being ordered, reserved, letters of interest, whatever term you want to use, or what they would do when they would roll out. And there were plenty of people at the time, including some on Wall Street, who said, I'm not entirely sure that we should buy into these ideas that are being thrown out there. So that's the thing that's interesting here between Lordstown and Nikola. You had two CEOs who were the visionaries for these companies, who ultimately were saying, this is what we plan on doing, and ultimately those statements are at the heart of why they are no longer running those companies.
Shares of electric truck maker Lordstown tumbling in the pre-market. Both the CEO and CFO have resigned. Our Phil LeBeau joins us now with more of those details. Good morning, Phil.
Scott, this shakeup is not a huge surprise given the questions that were mounting regarding Lordstown Motors and some of the claims that were called into question by a short seller just 3 months ago. As you take a look at shares of Lordstown, remember that what you have now are the CEO and the CFO have both resigned. So they're out immediately. The CEO, Steve Burns, he really provided the vision for Lordstown Motors, and he also was behind some of the comments that were ultimately a part of an independent investigation. He not only has resigned as CEO, he's also off the company's board of directors immediately. I mentioned that independent investigation. Lordstown announcing this morning the results of that independent investigation that it commissioned. And again, this was looking into the allegations from Hindenburg Research, which essentially said, look, the endurance and the claims about orders are a bunch of bull. Well, they say that most of the claims from Hindenburg Research were false and misleading. However, Lordstown's investigation did find that there were issues surrounding some of the statements regarding pre-orders for the Endurance. So now the company moves forward with Angela Strand becoming the executive chairwoman while they search for a CEO. Bottom line is this, guys. They don't have a lot of cash, and they've already said that they plan to have the Endurance go into production by the end of September. That is really called into question now that the company is looking for new leadership. And can it get there? Or what happens next for Lordstown? The big question that investors are asking this morning.
Okay, Phil, I thought that was great reporting, but let me ask you this point blank. I said it in Twitter after you broke the story. Steve Burns had zero credibility. What happens if they get a very good senior hand that you and I would respect, and then they go out and raise money? I mean, isn't it possible that Burns had to go?
So I think what Jim Cramer was saying there is, despite the fact that the Titanic is already halfway to the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, maybe a new captain can somehow save the ship. Yeah, no fucking chance, Jim. And I have to say this. If anyone is dumb enough to give a single cent more to Fraudstown Motors, they deserve to lose it all and then some.
Well, I think that most people looked at the fact that he did not have the leadership necessary to lead this company into the execution of production. Look, Joe SPac from RBC was out this morning saying he wasn't the right guy. If they get the right person, Jim, somebody who can come in who has both the operational expertise as well as the background within the auto industry to say, look, we're going to have to make some deals here, whether it's raising cash, whether it's striking an agreement with somebody. They've got some assets, Jim. They've got that plant, and they've got some tooling within that plant. Now the question is, how do you get to production? Their first mover advantage was really the only advantage that they had, that they could say, we're going to roll out an electric pickup truck before anybody else. If they don't start production by the end of September, what advantage do they have? Are you telling me that fleet operators are going to say, yeah, I'm going to go with this untested vehicle from a company that hasn't built a single vehicle as opposed to the new F-150 Lightning? Why would I go with the F-150 Lightning? I mean, they've only sold 48 million Lightning or F-Series over the history. Why would anybody do that? I mean, I'm trying to be facetious here, but you know what I'm getting at. Somebody has to come in, and they have to make moves immediately. This is not something where somebody can come in and say, well, let me see what's there and what's under the tent. Yeah. No, you've got to move quickly.
Look, I've got it. We want this thing. I'm looking at Scott going back. You know, Phil, fairy tales, we want fairy tales to come true. And I thought it could happen to Lordstown. But you're just spot on. I mean, maybe they have to just reorganize, or maybe they don't make it. But Phil, wasn't this a great dream that we thought could be an American Way story?
Could still be a great dream, Jim, but they got to move quick.
Okay, so Jim, I want to dig into Lordstown. So the top executives, CEO Steve Burns and CFO Julio Rodriguez, are out following a board investigation. Now, I don't know if this is that surprising following the news just last week that they're struggling with cash to start its commercial production of its electric pickup truck. But if investors still has shares of Lordstown, Jim, what should they do?
I can take this one, Jim. They should just give up. And I literally mean that. Until they can demonstrate an ability to do some homework and identify opportunities rather than throwing money at things and thinking they're in the casino, they're not an investor, they're an idiot, and they should act accordingly. It's dangerous to be throwing money at companies without doing any due diligence, any homework whatsoever. And I'm not saying this to be disrespectful, I'm saying this to try to stop people losing colossal amounts of money. The fact that anyone purchased stock in Nikola, including institutions and retail investors alone, should disqualify them from ever investing again, at least until they can prove themselves competent and able to do homework and research and analyze the company and the legitimacy of their products and the legitimacy of their claims before throwing their hard-earned money at that opportunity. And the same is true of Fraudstown Motors. Any retail investors, any institutional investors whatsoever, who purchased stock in Fraudstown Motors should take a long, hard look in the mirror and realize they put a gigantic pin on one end of the investment bell curve with a huge sign saying this is where I'm at, and recognize the implications of that.
Well, I don't know how they could ever have shares in Lordstown. I've been hammering that thing relentlessly ever since the CEO Burns said that he had orders on my show, and then there were no orders. It was just an expression of interest, whatever that is. So I can't help those people who own Lordstown. I mean, I helped you get out at a much higher price. I'm not going to give you an opine on what to do now.
Once again, the moral of the story here is think more and invest less. And I really want to stress this will not be the last of these EV SPacs that I'm covering as they begin sinking toward the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean. It's going to be one after the other after the other. That's not to say some of them won't be successful, but that is to say most of them will never even reach volume production. Fraudstown Motors is on the cusp of going bankrupt. I find it very hard to believe they'll be able to access capital from the markets. I think they'll be bankrupt within 12 months' time. Let me know in the comments below. How long do you think Fraudstown Motors will be around until they file for bankruptcy? I'm Stephen Mark Ryan. This is Solving the Money Problem, and I love you all. And don't forget, if you'd like up to $250 in free crypto bonuses with BlockFi, use the link in the description. You can also get 2 free stocks with WeBull and a free stock with Stake, also linked in the description. Thanks so much for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And of course, if you have any ideas for future videos, let me know. I read all your comments. P.S. If you're still watching, you're awesome. If you'd like early access, exclusive videos, regular Q&As, our private Discord server and more, consider supporting the channel at patreon.com/solvingthemoneyproblem so I can keep creating content for you guys. There's a link in the description. You can now also become a member of the channel for some exclusive perks. To learn more, click the join button next to subscribe. And don't forget to check out our merch store. Either way, the best form of support is you being here and watching, so thanks again.